Hello and welcome. My name is Zafar Iqbal, and you are watching the Mojo Story. Terrorists have targeted what they hate the most about Kashmir, its peace and a thriving tourism season. Today, terrorists targeted a group of tourists at Baisaran, which is a meadow ahead of Pahalgam, the famous tourism spot in South Kashmir. Now, these tourists have gone there walking or on ponies. There is no motorable road to that place, and that's where they were ambushed by the terrorists who fired indiscriminately at these tourists. Now, there are reports that many tourists are injured. There are some reports of some fatalities also. We're not sure about the numbers, but reports suggest that at least one tourist has been killed and several tourists are injured. Some of them are critically injured. Now, this is the defining photo you see on that screen. This is a girl sitting uh, with her partner or a fellow tourist who's lying on the ground, injured, or probably who has lost his life in that terrorist attack in South Kashmir in Pahalgam. Why has this terrorist attack happened now? And we'll go to our guest, Lieutenant General Raj Shukla. But let's first see these visuals. These are visuals from Pahalgam. You can see that there are people lying on the ground, injured, unconscious, some of them badly injured, and they've been moved to the hospital by the local. This is the place where tourists struck. This is a forested area. You can see on that screen. This is one of the tourists in absolute shock and disbelief as they try and explain their situation to the local people there. Uh, this has happened very, very suddenly. These terrorists would have obviously come with a plan and a recce, and they targeted these tourists before escaping into those forests. Security forces have moved into the area. Senior police officials are there at the spot monitoring the situation. The area has been cordoned off and operation has been started. But certainly a very shocking development in Kashmir. We're joined by Lieutenant General Raj Shukla. Welcome to Mojo Story, sir. We have been talking about Kashmir for a pretty long time, and we've been discussing the peace dividends in Kashmir. It's been a thriving tourism season. Lots of tourists have been visiting Kashmir. It's all booked and packed, but suddenly you see this terrorist attack in Kashmir. What do you make of this terrorist attack, sir?
Well, Zafar, you've seen, the valley is perhaps longer than I have. So, my first reaction is that it is dastardly, cowardly, and absolutely gruesome. The fact that it is serious enough, we should infer from the very fact that the Prime Minister, I believe, spoke to the Home Minister from Jeddah. I'm also told, if news reports are correct, that the Home Minister is visiting the site. So obviously it's not only a moment of anguish, but also a very serious incident. The larger point is this, and I think you said it. If you link it to Asim Munir's speech, where he spoke of Kashmir. So one thing is certain, that despite claims to the contrary, terror remains a central tool of statecraft of Pakistan. It is also a good way to distract from other problems, what's happening in Balochistan, what's happening with the TTP, Afghanistan. So they are in a complete mess. And if they are in a complete mess, this is also a way of, distracting domestic attention. As far as this incident is concerned, you're absolutely right. We know this area well. It's a meadow, perhaps on a trekking trail away from the roadhead. So the reaction of the quick reaction teams cannot be fast enough. And you're right, a site recce would have been carried out. The entry-exit points would have been recce'd. All that tactical stuff would have happened. Now the difficulties are, these things should not happen. But the difficulties are that I'm sure these terrorists would have merged with the local kacharwalas, the guides, the vendors, domestic tourists. It's not easy, though. I'm not justifying this in any way, but it is a serious challenge for the security forces. What is even more significant is that, as you're saying, Pakistan is challenging the return of normalcy. Pakistan is challenging tourism, which was really, I think the numbers were growing. If some reports are to be believed, it was zooming. It is also going to now, it's a challenge, assault on the local economy, sources of livelihood. So there is deep thought behind this whole thing. And if you see following a pattern, if my memory serves me right, I think around 10th or 12th April, there was infiltration bid foil in Akhnur. Something happened in the Chatru forest in Kishtwar. I think 3 terrorists were killed.
Yes.
The whole terror operation was brought into Bhadarwa. So वही देखो से पुरानी चीजें हो रही हैं, south of Pir Panjal, north of Pir Panjal. So of course we'll have to tighten the counter-infiltration grid. So people on ground know what is to be done along the LC infiltration avenues, depth areas, recession areas. What was really a good point in the last few years was that the financial links, the broader nexus had been cut to size. Now with the incidents that were happening last year and through this year, the fact that we are just a few months away from the Amarnath Yatra means we have to really step up our game and look at the whole design, because such incidents should not happen again. Otherwise, all the dividends that we have reaped so well over the last 7 to 8 years. If you ask me, one of the serious successes of this government is how we have brought down terror levels. And also see, even in the valley, the violence levels coming down and political balm being applied, electoral, elections being conducted. So these were serious gains. Now with these incidents, both north and south of Pir Panjal, and I'm sure the security forces are at it. Also, let me say, having been in those areas of Baramulla and all, terror is a long, hard grind. There are no fancy solutions to it. So I can't appear on TV and say, ye do teen cheezein kar do. We all know it. It's a long, hard grind, but it is I'm certain the army and the other security forces are taking note of this. It's time to sit up and take very serious note, because these things simply cannot happen. It is tragic, it is gruesome, and let me also say this: we have a lot of options in the escalatory ladder, and Pakistan. The larger point was, when will wisdom return to the Pakistan army? I thought, जब General Bajwa थोड़ी वो geoeconomics वगैरह की बात करने लगे थे, I thought some wisdom has returned. But you take Asim Munir's speech,
right. Absolutely. You mentioned about Asim Munir. You mentioned about Asim Munir. He spoke a few days ago and specifically said that Kashmir is the jugular vein of Pakistan, once again provoking. Let's have that soundbite up before we discuss further.
Government's stance on Kashmir is absolutely clear. It was our jugular vein. It is our jugular vein. We will not forget it. And we will not leave our Kashmiri brethren in their heroic struggle, what they are waging against the Indian occupation.
Right. You heard his soundbite. And also importantly, you were saying that this has happened in Pahalgam, and we are just days away from the Amarnath Yatra. And Pahalgam is an important route for Amarnath Yatra. So perhaps the selection of the place is also important. It has multiple signals. One, that it just shows that terrorists are present. They are showing their presence, carrying out this terror attack. And on the other hand, striking at a place which is the route of the Amarnath Yatra, which is just days away.
Yeah. But you want me to come in, Zafar?
Yes, sir.
So certainly, it is a thing to worry about and take notice, but this is also the time to show resilience and not cow down. We'll have to absorb these attacks. I'm sure the security forces will act. So the first thing is to get these perpetrators of this gruesome act. And as you rightly say, Amarnath Yatra is a good 2 months, 3 months away. I'm sure we'll do that. We've done it many times in the past, increase troop levels, increase surveillance. And as I said, that whole counter-infiltration grid, जो LC से शुरू होती है और depth areas तक आती है, everybody knows what is, the tactical, operational, and strategic stuff that has to be done. That will be done. And we have to step it up. But since Asim Munir Sahab was, ranting so much, please look at Baluchistan. Look at what's happening in your Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. आपके इलाके जो हैं आपके हाथ से बाहर निकल रहे हैं. You are fragmenting. The issue is not of whether our valley is the jugular vein. The way you are fragmenting POK, अपने आप हमारे पास चले आएगा. भाई कोई दानिशमंदी दिखा. Show some wisdom. What are you doing? This is an era where, look at the good stuff which is happening in technology, in economic prosperity. But see, ye manenge nahi. Let me point to one larger strategic design. It is not only here. Bangladesh mein dekhiye kya ho raha hai. ISI chief traveling, Ulal, Munir Hart. So I'm saying that I'm sure we will do this, but we must step up our game, show our strong hand. There are many options all the way up the escalatory ladder, from covert operations, what cannot be discussed on TV, from doing stuff along the LC, precision strikes, bade options hai. But we also have to play the long game well. And the long game is, look at what's happening in Bangladesh, the instabilities in Myanmar. So this is the reality of our, our strategic existence. हमको चार तीनों और पैनी नजर रखनी पड़ेगी, because it is pretty certain that having failed to get the political processes flowing again, Imran Khan in jail, all that stuff has not worked. They are back to their favorite game, distract attention, terror, wherever. But it is not going to work. India is far too big. The armed forces, security forces are far too strong for them to try any of this nonsense.
Right. And sir, what has happened is that after 370 abrogation, there were elections held in 2024 in an extremely peaceful atmosphere. Those elections were held and a government came to power. And since then, it's been absolutely peaceful in the valley, barring a few stray incidents. It's been mostly peaceful by and large. And that is the reason that we, as you were seeing, a surge in the local economy and a rush of tourists to the Kashmir Valley. Now, tourists are going to unexplored areas of Kashmir Valley, because all those places which are famous like Gulmarg, Pahalgam, they're already bustling, they're already full. So tourists are going to other places. Now, those are the dividends of peace. But all the way that there was absolute peace, why this particular moment has been chosen? As you were saying, that there is so much of a chaos and confusion in Pakistan, economic stability, political uncertainty. So they're back to playing their favorite game, again hitting at India. But do you think that if these figures rise, the casualties in today's terrorist attack, India will be left with no other option but to retaliate in some way?
Keep all our options open, we keep our powder dry, but the fact is that we have the capacity to bring the situation under control. I'm very sure we will do it. So I'm making 2 points simultaneously. There is, of course, a reason to sit up, be more vigilant, and all that we need to do in terms of strengthening the counter-infiltration grid should be done.
Yeah.
But lamba rasta hai. There are a lot of options along the escalatory ladder. But देखिए, since he was preaching to us, let me just preach back to Mr. General Shukla. कि देखिए, हमारा विवेक या दानिशमंदी देखिए, we use politics to resolve our insurgency disputes, and Pakistan tries to use the military to solve their politics. Now, this is a fundamental, what shall I say, contrarianism in our approach. So I would suggest that he adopts our approach of using politics to solve the problems of Balochistan. And for us, we have to step up our counter-infiltration grid. We have a very strong security force. There are a number of options, but we shouldn't even get to them. There's a lot of good stuff that can be done.
Right. And as you were pointing out, we're seeing a scaling up of infiltration on the line of control. There have been many sort of encounters at the line of control, and a stepping up of terrorism in areas south of Pir Panjal. Those areas which were terrorism-free, which were militancy-free, like the Chenab Valley, like areas of Kathua, areas of Udhampur. Now, those have seen a stepped up terrorism in the past few months. But Kashmir Valley was relatively safe. So is it also a part of a changing strategy by terrorists, while the focus is on those areas where there has been a stepped up terrorism over the past few months? They're back to Valley and again, coming up with such a huge terror strike here. because they are feeling the heat in those areas where they have stepped up their activities.
So, see, in my understanding, Zafar, the game hasn't changed over the years. What is the game? That you keep your terror infrastructure intact. तो उसमें कोई तब्दीली नहीं हुई है. जो इनके ग्रुप्स सैंक्शन होते हैं या all that, तो आप उनके नाम बदली कर दीजिए. So you have now, what is that LET proxy TRF, the Resistance Front, which has claimed basic terror infrastructure is intact. The Pakistan army is behind it. So let's not call it terrorists. It is Pakistan. Pakistan kar rahi hai. And they keep, accelerating north of Pir Panjal, south of Pir Panjal. But what we have to be, cautious about is that some of these incidents have definitely, they are rising. So I'm sure, action is being taken, but we have to act a little faster because both south and north of Pir Panjal, the outcomes are the same. People die. There are terror incidents. So how does it matter north or south? But yes, one thing is very significant. For a very long time, I have commanded in Baramulla division. ये गुलमर्ग वगैरह पहलगाम यहाँ पे कभी हुए नहीं है attacks. If I'm not mistaken, though I think there was one in the area of Gulmarg about, but they were isolated. But now this, targeting of Gulmarg, Pahalgam, this particular meadow, I'm sure they have carried out a good recce, seen the vulnerabilities. So this deliberate targeting of the tourist spots is, as you said in your opening remarks, it is to target tourism, target livelihoods, target normalcy, target the success of the electoral process. And therefore, it is a fundamental challenge to Indian democracy from Pakistan. And we have to get back absolutely.
Absolutely. And also one is reminded of Chetty Singh Pora that happened many years ago when President Clinton was in the country. And today, J.D. Venice is in India, is met with the Prime Minister. And again, this terror attack coming up in Kashmir, this seems to be like another sort of a deja vu of Chetty Singh Pora or even Pulwama too, the way that innocent tourists have been targeted and fired upon from different directions by this group of terrorists with the design to kill as many tourists as possible and to cause as much damage as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, there is no evidence, but you can't rule it out because that is the way the Pakistani mind perhaps works. But the, shall I say, more thoughtful amongst the Pakistanis have to consider this. Has terror ever paid dividends to Pakistan? If they are in such a mess, it is because of their adoption of terror as a tool of statecraft. So if it has not paid dividends in the past, what is the wisdom in investing it again? You do it. You forget the moral perspective. If it leads to strategic dividends, but it doesn't. Look what Pakistan has been reduced to. Its economy is smaller than the Bombay Stock Exchange, if I'm not mistaken. So, मिल क्या रहा है? अच्छा, ये सब करने के बाद, look how you're breaking up. Somebody was telling me they are, that day Asim Munir said 1,500 Baluchistani terrorists. Well, look at your understanding. Baluchistan is bigger than Punjab, Sindh, KKP put together. Yes. Somebody was telling me Baluchistan की जो कहानी है सदियों पुरानी है. पाकिस्तान की कहानी तो 1947 से शुरू होती है. So your narrow-mindedness, your simple, don't know, what shall I say, a very amateurish grasp of history, statecraft, coming from somebody like the Chief of Army Staff is amazing. And that this kind of worldview goes down the rank and file. And India is resilient enough. India will withstand it. Pakistan is not going to grow as a state. That's the bigger problem.
And now Home Minister Amit Shah is landing in Kashmir shortly because this is a major terror attack, a very big terror attack. We don't know exactly the number of tourists that have become casualty to this terror attack, but there are reports that many tourists have become casualty to this big terrorist attack in South Kashmir, in Pahalgam, where they were there at this spot, a group of tourists, and they were targeted from multiple directions by terrorists and fired upon. You can see on those visuals, there are many visuals actually we blurred those visuals where they are lying down and they are injured and moved to the hospital. many casualties that have taken place. Of course, we'll have to have a confirmation about the figure and the number, then only we can release those. But what is clear that it's a big terrorist attack that's taken place in Kashmir at a time when Kashmir is bustling with tourists. All the hotels are full, everywhere it's all packed, and that's the time when terrorists struck in Pahalgam, which is a famous tourism place, and caused this major terror attack to scare away the tourists and also to send out the bigger message that they are still present in the Kashmir Valley to carry out such big terror attacks. You can see on those visuals, those are tourists lying on the ground, unconscious, injured, moved to safety by the locals. Of course, this is a sort of a remote area in the sense that there's no motorable road to that place. All these tourists had trekked up to that place, or they would have gone by way of ponies, but that's the time that terrorists attacked them. And of course, you can see this is a jungle area, this is a forested area, so that's this jungles are an advantage to the terrorists. They can run away and hide there, but security forces have cordoned off the area and an operation has been started. But what I was telling you, sir, is that the elections took place in Kashmir and a popular government is in power now after many years. Leaders cutting across political lines have condemned this terror attack. We've been seeing tweets from Omar Abdullah, from Mehbooba Mufti. If we can have them up on the screen, that is Omar Abdullah. We have to have a different tweet of today's of Omar Abdullah and of Mehbooba Mufti, where she has of course condemned this attack. Sajjad Lone has also reacted. We can have his bite. In fact, he has all the Kashmir base politicians, leaders have condemned this terror attack, and they have said that this is not done at a time when Kashmir is a normal place now. There is not much terrorism happening in Kashmir for a pretty long time. We were saying that life is limping back to normal, terrorism is at a lowest ebb, but now we are seeing clearly a dramatic shift in the situation that is as good as any other place in the country. But now that is what has caused problem to the terrorists who want to show their presence by carrying out this spectacular terror attack, targeting innocent tourists at a place where they had just gone and they were just passing some time there. They're gone or walking to that place, and they targeted them and created this big terror attack. So we're showing the tweets of Omar Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti. Sajjad Lone, who's a prominent Kashmiri leader, has also reacted. Let's play his soundbite.
आपको बता दूं कि इससे बड़ा दुश्मन कोई कश्मीरियों का नहीं हो सकता। एक जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों की बिलखुसूस जो कश्मीरी है, यहाँ टूरिस्ट आज नहीं 200 साल से आते। हमारा एक नाम है, हमारी एक पहचान है जिसको शनाख्त कहते हैं, वो है कि हम मेहमान नवाज लोग हैं। हम अजनबी से अजनबी इंसान को अपने घर में, अपने दिल में जगह देते थे। ये वार उसके ऊपर है, उस पहचान के ऊपर। और उसके अलावा ये जो इक्तिसादी आज़ादी है कश्मीरी की कि वो अपने बलबूते पर कमाए, ये उसके खिलाफ एक अटैक है। ये चाहते हैं ये लोग कि यहाँ से टूरिस्ट निकल जाए और कश्मीरी जो है वो बगैर कमाई के, बगैर किसी चीज के जो है गुलाम बन के रहे। ये हमारे बच्चों के दुश्मन हैं, हमारी आने वाले नस्लों के दुश्मन हैं। ये टेररिस्ट लोग हैं। अल्लाह इनको गर्क करे, वो मैं इतना ही कह सकता हूँ। अल्लाह गर्क करे इनको कि जो निहत्ते टूरिस्ट को निशाना बनाए। इंशाअल्लाह न यहां माफी होगी, न आखिरत में माफी होगी। ये जहन्नम की आग में जलेंगे। ये सही बात नहीं है। और जो इंसान ऐसी चीज को सपोर्ट करता है वो भी जहन्नम की आग में जलेगा। आपको बता दूं कि इससे बड़ा दुश्मन कोई कश्मीरियों का नहीं हो सकता। एक जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों की बिलखुसूस जो कश्मीरी है, यहाँ टूरिस्ट आज नहीं 200 साल से आते।
Right, you heard it very clear and very strong message from Sajad Lone, there can be no stronger message than this. He's in the opposition. His party won just one seat, and he's the only MLA from the party right now. But that does not matter. He is very clear in his message that this is the way that Kashmiri Mehman Nawaz hai. We are people who welcome tourists, welcome our guests to our place, and it is not done. These are the worst enemies of Kashmir. In the meantime, Prime Minister Modi, who's on a visit to Saudi Arabia, has also tweeted, and I read out the tweet. I strongly condemn the terror attack in Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir. Condolences to those who have lost their loved ones. I pray that the injured recover at the earliest. All possible assistance is being provided to those affected. Those behind this heinous attack will be brought to justice. They will not be spared. Their evil agenda will never succeed. Our resolve to fight terrorism is unshakable, and it will get even stronger. Strong words from Prime Minister Modi, as Home Minister Amit Shah will soon be landing in Kashmir and to take stock of the situation. Now, sir, what we're discussing, that it's the peak tourism season. The fact is that right now, today, there are thousands and thousands of tourists in Kashmir Valley. So this will send across a message now. Now that tourists have been targeted, generally, even in peak militancy, tourists were never targeted in Kashmir the way that they have been targeted today. This is another sign of desperation, because this is not an engagement with the security forces. These are innocent tourists who have been targeted, who were not even targeted at the peak of militancy, but now they are being targeted. There can be no other sign of desperation than this, the way that they want that peace that has returned to Kashmir after so much of time and investment should go away, and Kashmir should return to the dark days.
Zafar, 3-4 thoughts come to my head. One is that we should take inspiration from the political resolve and the signaling. The Honorable Prime Minister saying that, it will only strengthen the war on terror. The Honorable Home Minister traveling to the terror site immediately. So it sends a very strong political resolve. Also, the political solidarity which you pointed out across the aisle. I have heard what the Honorable Chief Minister said, what Mehbooba ji said, what Iltija said, I think her daughter, उन्होंने भी कुछ ऐसे ही कहा है, and what Sajid Saab said, very wise words, that they are trying to target our Mehman Nawazi, her whole identity as Mehman Nawaz. So all this strength, signals great resolve and solidarity, which should lead us to conclude that yes, it is a gruesome attack, it is a tragic attack, but it doesn't mean that the larger normalcy has been destroyed. This is just isolated. That is how we should take it. And, I would strongly urge that tourism should continue. Panic should not be spread. This is an isolated incident, howsoever unfortunate. And the other thing I would just like to point out as a comment is that, you see, whenever there are prolonged periods of normalcy, there are things to worry for the security force. I remember from Baramulla, when there was a prolonged period of normalcy, Mora. Here we had a good time for 6-7 months, Udi happened. So this will always happen, because the nature of this whole terror stuff is that when nothing happens for very long, it is so monotonous. The security forces, tend to lose vigilance. And in fact, keeping up the vigilance levels is one of the biggest command challenges. How to keep them alive and vigilant right through. And yet I would say that the gains of the last 10 to 12 years have been so enormous that in comparison, this is an isolated incident, however gruesome. It's very painful, tragic. So I'm not commenting on that. And the good message is the signaling, resolve, and political solidarity from across the political line. And I see Happy Man Saab here now.
Yes, Happy Man, Jacob joining us right now. Happy Man, it's a major terror attack that's taken place in Kashmir. We have been discussing that. What we were discussing, that even in the peak times of terrorism and militancy, tourists were not targeted like they have been targeted today. We are not revealing the figures because we'll have to have an official confirmation about the number of people who have been killed today. But many casualties have taken place in this terror attacks. What are your first thoughts after you heard this news? What we know is that the Prime Minister has reacted, the Home Minister is on the way to Kashmir, and the security forces have cordoned off the area. Here you can again see Prime Minister's tweet strongly condemning the terror attack and condolences to those who have lost their loved ones. This is happening days after Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir said that Kashmir is the jugular vein of Pakistan.
Thank you, sir, for having me on the program. I think this is clearly some worrying, and it's sad. Lives have been lost in Pahalgam. But let me sort of try and put that in perspective the way I see it, and I completely and totally agree with what General Shukla said on sort of the big picture, as it were. If you look at the trends in the last 4 years since the India-Pakistan ceasefire reiteration in the February of 2021,
Yes.
you are actually looking at a declining sort of statistics trend, as it were, in terms of terror attacks. If you were to look at the incidents of killing in Jammu and Kashmir, it was 153 in 2021. It was 151 in 2022. It was 61 last year, and so far for fourth month of 2025, you're talking about 10 incidents, of which only one civilian has lost life so far. So while this should be condemned, I think Pakistan should be told in no uncertain terms that this is something that would not go unpunished and unresponded to. I think the bigger picture needs to be kept in mind, and the big picture really is that this is not something that should really be seen as a major substantive change in the sort of equation that we have established with Pakistan over the last several years. There is a certain calm in Jammu and Kashmir. There is a certain sort of relationship that has been established between the two sides, particularly between the deep state in Pakistan. So to that extent, I don't want to sort of take our minds and eyes away from the big picture, as General Shukla correctly pointed out. But I think I would sort of what really worries me is, as you correctly pointed out, Safar, is the recent speech by the Pakistan Army Chief about Hindus, Muslims being two different nations, and he sort of the way he went about was a bit disturbing for, I think, all peace-loving people in the region. But more importantly, today the Prime Minister is in the Middle East, and we've had a great relationship with the Middle East over the years, especially in the context of counterterrorism, something that Pakistan clearly does not like, because there was a time when Pakistan sort of had a great deal of sway in the Middle East vis-a-vis India. But today that the tables have turned, India-Middle East cooperation is the name of the game. And two, we also have the Vice President of the United States in India as we speak, and this is happening at a time when he's on a visit, on the first visit to Delhi. So is Pakistan trying to send a sort of message to the international community while Mr. Modi is in the Middle East and meeting Mohammed bin Salman, and the Vice President is in India? I think these are questions, but again, these are all really one can sort of look at these and sort of try and put them together and create an explanation. But at the end of the day, I go by what General Shukla said. The big picture really is not something that is that worrying, while we should sort of mourn the life that has been lost.
Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, you want to come in? But just one small point I would want to say. We did a small story, Prime Minister's flight going to Jeddah, and the Royal Saudi Air Force jets, escorted that flight. It was a great gesture by the Saudis. Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, you want to come in?
Points, if I don't know if the Pakistanis have timed it with the visit of Mr. J.D. Vance. It is not smart statecraft. Are you telling the world's most populous nation that when your vice president is here, we'll resort to this terror kind of stuff? It is not even smart. And the positive you must take is, I think, I was in Abu Dhabi 2 months back, and I was pleasantly surprised to see a modernizing strategic discourse in that part of the Islamic world. वहां बात क्या हो रही थी? I was amazed of non-oil growth, pioneering renewables, how Saudi Arabia is going to be, the energy, what shall I say, provide the energy for the AI revolution. So one part of the Islamic world is now getting to a very modernizing strategic discourse. और यहाँ वो आसिम मुनीर की speech was, took Pakistan 2 centuries back. So there is no wisdom in what Pakistan is doing. And while the terror attack is gruesome, it is tactical. And I think their larger, what shall I say, quiver of statecraft, they have run out of options. So वही पुराना arrow, terror वाला, it doesn't,
But sir, you were saying that it's not a clever tactic by Pakistan. But this has happened in the past. When Bill Clinton was in India, there is a Chetty Singh Pora that happened. This is not something that is happening for the first time.
So at that time, the international community, for some strange reason, was more accepting of terror. Today it is not. The terrain is not fertile for this kind of stuff. And I'm sure if the Americans have taken note, there will be some admonitions or responses to the Pakistanis.
Right. Right. Happy Man Jacob, the point is that we were talking about that this is a very big terror attack. We are not giving out any numbers of people who have died, but reports say, and we know that there are many casualties that have taken place. But the fact is, when an Uri happened, there was a surgical strike. When a Pulwama happened, this could perhaps be a Pulwama too. There was a Balakot. Do you think that Pakistan has again crossed the red line, and this time around, India will retaliate, and that retaliation is going to be strong? Going by the number of the reports about the number of the people who have been killed and injured in this terror attack.
Zafar, as you correctly said, the numbers are not known. I certainly don't have access to those numbers, and I am certainly not going to sit in judgment of what the government of India should do in its wisdom in sort of response to in sort of response to what the terrorists have done in Pahalgam. But I will say one thing, and that is that we have a certain policy in place with Pakistan, which is a certain minimal engagement with the Pakistani deep state, as it were. As and when there is a requirement, there is a back channel that we believe that is activated. And I think that has been sort of producing dividends and results for the last several years. In fact, from 2019 onwards, this back channel has been in operation. Thanks to the back channel, we have the 2021 ceasefire agreement. And I think one of the reasons why the Pakistani deep state or the establishment likes this back channel is because for the first time in India's history, the Indians are reaching out to Rawalpindi directly without going through Islamabad. This is something that the Pakistani army likes. I don't think the Indian government should undo or rupture that dialogue process that's happening with the Pakistani deep state, because it has, as I said, the numbers bear out. It has provided a certain amount of breather in Jammu and Kashmir. It has allowed the government of India to maintain a minimal relationship with Pakistan and move on to other bigger issues, be it the China frontier, be it the Indo-Pacific, or the sort of engagement of the great powers.
Happy Man, this is the defining photo. Here is a girl sitting on the floor. This is the defining photo of today's terror attack, and a person is lying in front of her, perhaps unconscious, perhaps he's dead, perhaps he's injured. But we know that this is a big terror attack. And at this point in time, Barkha Dutt, our editor-in-chief, also joins us. Barkha, I was asking Happy Man that Uri happened, there was a surgical strike. A Pulwama happened. This is perhaps a Pulwama too. There was a Balakot. Do you see a retaliation, a strong retaliation from India this time around, and Pakistan has yet again crossed the red line?
Actually don't want to discuss the retaliation or the possibilities or the options at all, and I don't think we should be doing it till we have a clear sense of what has happened. We have official details, we have official casualty figures. If I could please request the producers to bring up shots. We do have images from the ground. One of the images that Zafar referenced to, of course, is very, very painful. Not this. Could we please play the video? I'm going to want to play the video that we have where you can hear a local Kashmiri running to help desperate, distraught tourists. You can see some bodies lying on the ground. Again, I don't want to make any guesses. I don't want to talk about what unofficial sources are telling us about the casualty figures. I can say the information that we have from very highly placed sources on the ground is very grim, but we are not going to release any casualty figure till it is officially announced by either the police or the local administration or the central government. I want to actually, as I talk to Dr. Happymon Jacob, General Shukla, Zafar Iqbal, could we play this? Zafar, you had made a reel. Where is that reel? We would need to play that video up sound. While that video is being readied, let me actually bring in General Shukla and Dr. Happymon with a question I have. This reminded me of when Bill Clinton was here. I'm old enough to remember this. Bill Clinton was here and Chitti Singhpura massacre happened, General Shukla. I was a young reporter. I flew immediately to Srinagar. And there is a pattern here. We cannot ignore the fact that American Vice President J.D. Vance is in India. This is an old terrorist playbook, and that old terrorist playbook is the desperation to get international media, to somehow get the Americans who, that old style commentary on Kashmir is dead and gone, to somehow revive that. I mean, the timing seems planned to that old style desperation. General Shukla?
So we were discussing precisely that, but you came.
Yeah.
And you see, if that is the objective, what you just said of the Pakistanis, I think it's not very astute, because the whole terror dynamic has changed, the context has changed. The incident that you were referring to, the world was a little more accepting of terror for some very strange reason. It should not have been. But today, that's not the case. And that is certainly not the case with the Trump administration. I mean, we have seen what the responses have been worldwide. So I don't know what kind of message are you trying to send to America and to Mr. J.D. Vance. It is thoroughly inept. If those are the triggers. So, and therefore, I think, the larger story is what I was just discussing with Zafar before you came. Pakistan is running out of options. Look what's happening in Balochistan. We discussed on your show the other day, TTP, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. When you are in a mess, your politics is in a mess. You get this jugular vein of Kashmir back, Asim Munir's speech, and you do this now to distract attention. So, I mean, if we are from the Pakistani lens, from their perspective of statecraft, it doesn't seem to be wise at all. It is less than astute. And from our perspective, what I was saying is that it is extremely gruesome, tragic. I have seen that reel that you were referring to. That is I think these are those unifying moments where everybody has come together. Not only the local Kashmiri, but he's signaling from the top, the Prime Minister's resolve. I mean, he speak to the Home Minister from Jeddah. The Home Minister travels there. What I've heard what Mehbooba Mufti ji said, what the Honorable Chief Minister said, Omar Abdullah, what Imtijaz. So political resolve, solidarity, and we must understand what it is. This is a targeting of the Indian democracy, local economy, sources of livelihood, tourism, which was zooming. I mean, I haven't been there for a while, but all my friends who've been there tell you the tourist scene is unbelievable. So targeting of Gulmarg a year back, now Pahalgam specifically. So this is all part of...
Just one point, sir. The famous tourism places of Kashmir, like Srinagar, like Gulmarg, like Pahalgam, they are all full. And now tourists are going to unexplored places. And this is also an unexplored place. This is not Pahalgam. This is a meadow ahead of Pahalgam, where there is no motorable road to that place. Tourists have to walk, or they have to go on the ponies to that place. And this is specifically chosen, as we're discussing, and this is also... We are approaching the Amarnath Yatra, and this has happened at Pahalgam, which is the base camp for Amarnath Yatra. This is to send across multiple messages. One, that tourists are still there. They are able to carry out these terror attacks and also scare away the tourists. Even as of now, today, there are thousands and thousands of tourists all across Kashmir Valley. And this is going to send across a message that Kashmir is not safe anymore. So these are multiple messages that have been put across. And that's why this place and this timing has been selected by terrorists.
Absolutely, but that is my precise point, Zafar. This is the time for resolve, solidarity, and resilience. We should not take this message. We should say that the normalcy is sufficient, it is deep, this is an isolated incident, tourism will go on, we will step up whatever preparations need to be done from the Amarnath Yatra. We have faced many of these challenges in the past. So, I know our security forces, our state, we will take care of this. So it is definitely a reverse, but it is not a reverse enough to let the entire paradigm of normalcy, democracy, which was such an achievement. We are not so brittle. We are far more, what shall I say, resilient and strong. So don't take this message. This message is not to be taken.
Right.
But I agree that the message that the terrorists would want General Shukla is the precise message that we should not take. But that said, this is a very grim situation. I am consciously not sharing the information we have on what the casualty figures might look like. The Prime Minister has spoken with the Home Minister. The Home Minister is headed to Jammu and Kashmir. This is his tweet: anguished by the terror attack, my thoughts are with the families. Those involved will not be spared. We will come down heavily on the perpetrators. I have briefed the Prime Minister. I am holding an urgent security review meeting in Srinagar with all agencies. This is the Home Minister's statement, and he should be on the ground in Kashmir in moments from now. I also want to play, again, our audience will understand this, our guests will understand this. We do not want to play anything that may inflame the situation. So we have to be very careful in what we are able to play out, because a lot of the footage is unfiltered, it's raw. Yes, General Shukla, you wanted to say something?
One line, Barka.
Yes.
Our response tactically, operationally, and strategically should be strong. But the response must be calibrated and separated from emotion. That's the small point. Because
Right.
emotions in such circumstances.
Yeah, Dr. Happy Moon?
No, I just wanted to come in and say that, Barka, you hit the nail on the head when you said that we've sort of seen this movie play out before. 2000, when Bill Clinton visited India, we had terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, you've seen that whenever the Indian side has refused to sort of play to the Pakistani tune on talks or conversations or anything, the Pakistanis have attempted to flare up the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. But I think that the problem with that is that Pakistan is actually is sort of going by a very old playbook. Indians have moved on from that sort of situation where whenever Pakistan did something in Jammu and Kashmir, we would rush to a dialogue with Pakistan and sort of try and sort of assuage them that we can go back to a conversation, dialogue, and comprehensive. That I think that age is gone, that phase is gone, that playbook is no more in sort of in vogue in Delhi. We are looking at a paradigm shift in India-Pakistan relationship, and in that paradigm shift, Pakistan is not a happy actor, right? And Pakistan is looking at the international situation where the Americans or the Europeans are not concerned about what is happening between India and Pakistan. They are not talking about Jammu and Kashmir anymore. Jammu and Kashmir has moved on in many ways. You have an elected government there. You have normalcy there. The Middle East, which was once in Pakistan's pocket in many ways, is welcoming the Indian government, the Indian Prime Minister. There is a great deal of counterterrorism cooperation going on between the two sides. The Taliban, which was once Pakistan's biggest proxy in Afghanistan, has turned against Pakistan. It has internal troubles within the country. So you're looking at a certain amount of desperation in Pakistan, which I think it is trying to sort of take out against India without realizing that the age when India would rush to a dialogue process because Pakistan was pinpricking India, that age is gone. That playbook is no more fashionable in Delhi. So I would say that India must therefore do everything it can to bring those responsible to justice, and at the same time reach out to the Pakistani deep state through the appropriate channels and tell them in no uncertain terms that this is not something that will deliver Pakistan what Pakistan seeks to achieve from India. That it must be shut down.
What does it mean right now to reach out to the Pakistan through back channels? What does it mean to activate back channels at this point? Why would anyone use back channels at this point, Happy Mon?
For the simple reason that you're looking at a reduction in violence from 2021, ever since the agreement between India and Pakistan on the ceasefire. There is statistics which show that because of that conversation, remember in 2020, the ceasefire violations in Jammu and Kashmir were 5,000. In the last 5 years, last 4 years put together, you're probably talking about 10 to 12 ceasefire violations. This is a result of a sustained, right.
Happy you must have noticed that in the last 3 or 4 months, there have been repeated ceasefire violations at the border. While by and large, the ceasefire agreement has held, but you have seen repeated violations of ceasefire in Akhnur, in areas of Kathua, in areas to the south of Peer Panjal. There has been resurgence of terrorism in those areas. So while you're counting all those years, but if we specifically talk about the last 3 months, there has actually been an escalation, though not in the Kashmir Valley, but in the areas of Jammu and the line of control. So we have also seen recently that Indian Army, in fact, put out a statement that Pakistani Army crossed the LOC into the Indian territory, and there was a casualty of an Indian soldier on the Indian side. So we have been seeing very tense situation at the line of control in the last 3 months.
I don't disagree with that. I think we have witnessed similar moments last year. We have witnessed similar moments throughout the last few years after the 2021 ceasefire agreement. And yet, despite those moments of tensions and ceasefire violations and terror attacks, we have not seen a big spike in the sort of violence between the two sides. So I would therefore go back to what General Shukla said earlier, which is that nothing big has changed between the two sides. While this is a sad incident, this is something that must be responded to at all levels. We should not look at this as a big sort of rupture in the status quo that India has managed to create in Jammu and Kashmir, and a new normal that it has managed to create with Pakistan.
Right. I want to just play out a clip of what we saw on the ground, how you can hear a local Kashmiri running to the help of tourists. There are bodies strewn all over the sort of hillsides of Pahalgam. Let's just take a look. This is only a sliver of the horror that has unfolded today in Srinagar, reminiscent of a very old terror playbook. Terror is desperate for the world to take attention. In a battle they have clearly lost. Trying hard while JD Vance is in India to bring the attention back to themselves. Let's take a look.
हम आ रहे हैं, आप टेंशन कोई बात नहीं, हम आ रहे हैं, आप टेंशन मत लो मैडम, हम आ रहे हैं। मैंने खुदाया, कहाँ पे आपका बेटा, कहाँ पे है? कोई बात नहीं, हम इनके साथ हैं। ये प्रेसिडेंट है ना, वही साहब, ये यूनियन का प्रेसिडेंट है, ये साथ में, आपको कोई टेंशन नहीं मैडम, आप कोई टेंशन मत लें, हम साथ में। अरे मैडम, ये प्रेसिडेंट साथ आया है, आपको किसी चीज का डरने का नहीं, हम साथ में। आपको किसी को क्या हुआ है? आपने क्या देखा है यहाँ पे?
Right. So this is just a sense of what's happening on the ground. Meanwhile, the Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir has posted on social media saying anti-terror ops have been launched to neutralize terrorists. Entire nation is angry. The blood of our forces is boiling. I want to assure the nation that perpetrators of the Pahalgam attack will have to pay a very heavy price for their heinous attacks. My heartfelt condolences to bereaved families, right? So I think you are getting a very direct commentary from Prime Minister, Home Minister, the Lieutenant Governor, the Chief Minister, all of the stakeholders in this. And while I don't want to, speculate on options, it's quite clear that options are going to be channelized clearly. It also gives you the sense of the scale of how big this is. Again, we have been awaiting official announcements on casualty figures, but let's be clear, there are casualties. And these casualties are simply of those, these deaths are of those who have come in to just enjoy a holiday. You can see those desperate, distraught tourists there in those videos where by the hills of Pahalgam, bodies are strewn. And yeah, we are talking of, General Shukla, the LG saying the blood of our forces is boiling. There will be retaliation. Happy Mon is saying, look, somebody's got to pick up that hotline and say to Pakistan, what you've done is not on. But then after that, what? And again, I don't want to I don't want to say Pulwama 2.0, Balakot, Uri. We've been in this moment before. We have been in this moment before. Our forces will do what they need to. But if you're a commander on the ground right now, what would be your first priority?
There are commanders on the ground. My moment of being a commander is over. So let those commanders do what they have to. I trust their competence and their wisdom. But as an independent observer, what we have to do is first and foremost is get the perpetrators of the attack the soonest. So that will be the first message. We must review the entire counter-infiltration grid, the broader financial nexus, because apparently there have been some, what shall I say, some deficits in those that this incident has happened. What should also worry us is, as I think Zafar pointed out, over the last 5 to 6 months, we have seen the activation of the whole LC from Keri, Bhattal to Kishtwar, Bharadwar, Bhadrava, all the way up to Gulmarg. So the terror, apparatus is back. Pakistan has pulled out that old rusted arrow of terror from its quiver of statecraft, having run out of all options. So we will have to step up our game in this regard. There are many other options, right from covert operations, which cannot be discussed on television. All that stuff is to be done. But as to what precise action is to be taken will be determined by people in the know. Because unless you know the details of what's happened, what the situation is, sitting on televisions, we should not prescribe any particular option. But just one point, that the pain points, which are many against Pakistan, must be increased. I think this is also a time to leverage the diplomacy terrain, because the wider position of the international system is vehemently against it. So that is something we must step up. The military options are also always with us. And one small point, I don't know whether I differ with Happy Murray, he was saying the same thing. This is not the time to talk. Whether back channel, front channel, this is the time.
I would agree. Yeah.
Then talk, not talk.
Yeah. Happy Mohan, I was in fact a bit puzzled at your comment that, India should activate the back channel and convey to Pakistan that this will not be tolerated. What is there to say to Pakistan at this time? What is there to say?
Barka, let me put in context what I said. I think there are a couple of things. Number one, I do not know the scale of the attack, and based on the scale of the attack, based on the information that the government has, it will have to, of course, respond, and based on the intensity of the attack. There's no question about that. The larger point that I'm trying to make is that Pakistan cannot force or blackmail India into the negotiating table, which they have tried in the past, and that is not more acceptable. When I say that government of India or its representatives should utilize the back channel and call Rawalpindi and say that this is unacceptable, I am not saying that we should rule out the reality of or the importance of bringing the perpetrators to justice. I think all necessary action must be taken, as General pointed out, the tactical or strategic, in order to bring those to justice. But I also, while doing that, I'm also cognizant that I do not want this sort of new normal that India has established with Pakistan to be completely ruptured. I want, even while you hit at, as General pointed out, the sort of pain points, as it were, of Pakistan, of the terror camps, etc., there must be a certain stern warning communicated to the Pakistani side that we are not going to be forced into the negotiating table. I just want to sort of add one final point. The last major terror attack, and I don't know how big or in scale this one is, but remember, in Pulwama too, it was Donald Trump who was in power in Washington, and you had a certain conversation that happened at that point of time. I don't know what the Pakistanis are playing at, but the international situation is something that keeps coming back to my head. I can't sort of completely, and
the international situation is relevant, and I'll tell you why it's relevant, because I think the timing is timed to the visit of JD Vance in India. There is no two ways about that, but to what end is not clear. Secondly, when you talk about the scale, I want to bring up Omar Abdullah's second comment on social media. I think we don't need these details right now. What is the relevance of these details, Zafar? Can we take it off? I want to say, needless to say, Omar Abdullah has said this attack, I need the tweet guys back. Needless to say, this attack is much larger than anything we've seen directed at civilians in recent years. This is the worst terror attack, Happymon, against civilians in, I would say, as someone covering Kashmir for the last 30 years, possibly the last decade. That's how big it is.
That is serious. I mean, if that is the case, then I certainly would amend my own statement saying that this is not the time for diplomacy. This is the time for the appropriate response to the perpetrators of this attack. There's no doubt about it. This is certainly not the time for diplomacy. Because I was going by the media reports, which basically said this was not as major as you sort of just pointed out.
I mean, the chief minister has said that it is, and now I'm able to say it because I'm quoting an official source. We've had this unofficially for the last 2 hours, but we've been, sitting on that information because we wanted it to come out officially. The chief minister has now said, can we get that tweet up on share screen, please? The chief minister has now said that this is the worst attack. It's much larger than anything we've seen directed at civilians in recent years. So it gives you some sense of what is happening. Everybody from the prime minister to the home minister to the lieutenant governor are now speaking about the perpetrators not being spared. General Shukla, Happymon mentions the larger global context, and I agree with him. You can't divorce it. But what's the aim? Okay, you've timed it to Vance being here, but what's the end game here? What is the end game here?
Sheer stupidity. I can't think of anything else. Because as somebody pointed out earlier on the show, the international system has moved on. Kashmir itself has moved on. The subcontinent has moved on. And you pull out that old rusted arrow of terror from your statecraft. I mean, there's sheer lack of imagination. So if it is targeted to the international system, it is foolhardy. I see no gains. And of course, the response is something that India will have to do. Whatever we decide to do, the response is ours. But if there was a larger context behind this, it's sheer stupidity and foolhardiness. But it should not be, now if you go back, take it back to that Asim Munir speech. I mean, he was reviving all those issues. General Bajwa, I thought he was thoughtful for a brief while when he spoke about geoeconomics. It seemed that some kind of broader sense was returning to the military establishment. They are back to that old terror game. And you seriously ask, they should seriously ask themselves, will it work? I don't think so. And the world is moving on. Look at our strategic discourse with Saudi Arabia. The valley itself has moved on. J&K has moved on. Pakistan is, fragmenting. And you do this kind of stuff. I don't see any wisdom behind this at all.
Yeah. What are we headed towards? I mean, I don't want to jump the gun. I want there to be an official sense of the scale of what's happened, but the chief minister has given us an indication. What are we? It is sheer stupidity, but India isn't going to let it go, right? And what are we looking at?
So when Pahalgam happened, what we broadly showed was what I call new normals in our strategic outlook. That we will not keep absorbing terror. If the event so deserves, we shall respond. So perhaps that is being considered, because now it appears from the news reports that it is pretty more serious than it appeared early in the evening. But what that response should be, I don't think we should speculate on television. That is for people in the know to decide, and we have many options. And though they don't have to be immediate, they have to be timed, they have to be calibrated. But Pakistan is not going to get it. Of that, I'm certain.
Zafar, it's over to you. What are the latest details we have?
Well, the latest details, of course, as we were discussing, we're not giving out any figures, but it's one of the big terror attacks that's taken place in Pahalgam, which is a tourist place. And there was a group of tourists which were at Baisaran, which is slightly up, not in the Pahalgam town, where they were targeted by a group of terrorists, were told by our sources, were wearing military fatigues, and they targeted these tourists when they were horse riding, and they carried out this terror attack. And afterwards, they ran into those jungles. Senior police officers and officers from other security forces have reached the spot. The area has been cordoned off, and an operation has been started. Home Minister Amit Shah will be visiting that spot soon. He's on the way to Kashmir Valley, and he'll be landing at around 8 p.m. to take stock of the situation in the Kashmir Valley. What we know for a fact that all Kashmiri politicians cutting across political lines have condemned this attack. Sajad Lone has condemned, Mehbooba Mufti has condemned, Umar Abdullah. All Kashmiri leaders have condemned this terror attack. And remember, even in the peak times of militancy, terrorists never targeted the tourists, but this time around, tourists were
Yeah, the president
specifically
is reacting.
targeted.
I just want everybody to understand the scale of what has happened. You know, some of us are battle hardy, military veterans like General Shukla more than others. This is not an everyday news development. The president, the lieutenant governor, the chief minister, the prime minister, the home minister are all reacting. That's the president's comment on the screen. Attacking innocent citizens, in this case tourists, is utterly appalling and unpardonable. That's the president's statement. Sorry, Zafar, go on.
Yes. So I was saying that a security review meet will take place, obviously, to take stock of the situation, and operation is already underway. We're told by our sources that this could be possibly a group of Lashkar terrorists who are active in that area. Remember, terrorists have been targeting security forces in remote areas, in jungle areas over the last few months, but to the south of Pir Panjal, in the Jammu region. This is after many months that we're seeing a big terrorist attack taking place in the Kashmir Valley, where innocent tourists have been targeted at a time when Kashmir is full of tourists, and tourists are going to these unexplored places. Remember, there is peace and normalcy in Kashmir, and that is why tourists are going to all those places which are not so familiar, like Pahalgam and Gulmarg and Srinagar. They are going to those unexplored places, and that's precisely the reason that terrorists have picked up this spot where there is no motorable road to reach, and they targeted these tourists. The death toll, we are not putting out any
So
figure.
basis your information, these tourists were on a horse ride or a pony ride, as is
Yes,
common activity by tourists in the hills of Pahalgam. This is not exactly a pakka road. It's
there,
actually a
there is there is
hill,
no pakka road to.
and your
Yes,
sense is that the terrorists were probably disguised in military camouflages, hiding
yes,
in that area, and were
yes,
able to target these tourists as they rode up the hills of Pahalgam on their ponies, on their ghodas,
right.
which is a common sight. Again, we have read the Lieutenant Governor's comments, but I'll read them again. The anti-terror ops have been launched to neutralize terrorists. The entire nation is angry. The blood of our forces is boiling. I want to assure the nation that the perpetrators of the Pahalgam attack will have to pay a very heavy price for the heinous act. My heartfelt condolences to bereaved families. This is Lieutenant Governor Sinha's comment. As I said, again, the rules of journalism forbid us from sharing casualty figures at this point, even though we have them from our military and police sources on the ground. Because there are families involved, and the families must have that information first. We cannot be sharing this. It's a very sensitive time, but I think you can tell from the scale of the profile of the interventions, the fact that Amit Shah is on the ground already in Kashmir heading to Pahalgam. um, you know, this is Happy One. It gives you a sense of what we're really talking about here. If we could start playing reactions that we have from Jammu and Kashmir, also get those comments up. I'll
Yes,
start with Sajad
yes,
Loon. Let me start
yes.
with Sajad Loon. We'll get Sakina Ittu of the National Conference right after that. Across party lines, there is absolute horror at what has happened. Because remember also that the economy of Jammu and Kashmir has been booming with packed hotels, people on the streets. You know, I remember going there in the assembly elections and the Lok Sabha elections, and I was taken aback because areas of downtown Srinagar, which were once separatist strongholds, where it was de facto curfew. 6 baje ke baad you couldn't see anybody on the streets. There's no room to move. There's no room to move. And these markets were open till midnight, 1 in the morning, right? And what is being attacked, as General Shukla says, is not just democracy, but it is this idea of normalcy that has been embraced by the people of Jammu and Kashmir, that has been embraced by the rest of India. That is what the terrorists are trying to target. They're trying to say by attacking visitors, ki aap yahan mat aao. That is what it is, ki aap yahan mat aao. And I want to play out reactions as they're coming in. Sajad Lone responding. I'm also waiting for National Conference leaders, BJP leaders, PDP leaders. Everybody's reacting. Let's start with Sajad Lone.
आपको बता दूं कि इससे बड़ा दुश्मन कोई कश्मीरियों का नहीं हो सकता। एक, जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों की बिलखसूस जो कश्मीरी है, यहाँ टूरिस्ट आज नहीं 200 साल से आते। हमारा एक नाम है, हमारी एक पहचान है जिसको शनाख्त कहते हैं, वो है कि हम मेहमान नवाज लोग हैं। हम अजनबी से अजनबी इंसान को अपने घर में, अपने दिल में जगह देते थे। ये वार उसके ऊपर है, उस पहचान के ऊपर। और उसके अलावा ये जो इक्तिसादी आज़ादी है कश्मीरी की, कि वो अपने बलबूते पर कमाए, ये उसके खिलाफ एक अटैक है। ये चाहते हैं ये लोग कि यहाँ से टूरिस्ट निकल जाए और कश्मीरी जो है वो बगैर कमाई के, बगैर किसी चीज के जो है गुलाम बन के रहे। ये हमारे बच्चों के दुश्मन हैं, हमारी आने वाले नस्लों के दुश्मन हैं। ये टेररिस्ट लोग हैं। अल्लाह इनको गर्क करे, और मैं इतना ही कह सकता हूं, अल्लाह गर्क करे इनको कि जो निहत्ते टूरिस्ट को निशाना बनाए। इंशाअल्लाह न यहां माफी होगी, न आखिरत में माफी होगी। ये जहन्नम की आग में जलेंगे। ये सही बात नहीं है। और जो इंसान ऐसी चीज को सपोर्ट करता है वो भी जहन्नम की आग में जलेगा।
ये जहन्नुम की आग में जलेंगे। Sajad Lone's own father was killed by ISI-backed Pakistani terrorists. We are seeing visuals. I just want to get this quote up on the screen. Zafar, I could request you also if you could also just add a few of these quotes because news is coming in so fast. We need all the information on our screen. Ye jahannam ki aag mein jalenge se Sajad Lone. General Shukla, you wanted to come in.
I was saying, Barkha, this is a perfect response of Mr. Sajid Lone, Sajad Lone to the demagoguery of General Asim Munir that day, when he was talking of jugular vein and all, and he's pointing to the fact that it's an assault on the tradition and the identity of Mehman Nawazi. So wisdom from one side, political solidarity from one side, and demagoguery from the other side. So I think it's a very apt response to General Asim.
Yeah, it's a very, very strong statement, Happy Mon. Do go ahead, and then we have National Conference's Sakina Ittu giving the first estimate of the casualty figures. Our information is that the numbers are higher than what she's saying, but I'm going to play that out in a moment. Go ahead, Dr. Jacob.
Right. I think, Barkha, you asked a little while ago, what is Pakistan getting at? What is Pakistan's end game here? I think Pakistan's end game is quite clear, right? I mean, they are unhappy with being ignored by India. They're unhappy with the status quo. They think that the status quo doesn't suit them. Therefore, they are testing the waters to see if Indians fall into a particular trap that they are sort of laying for the Indian side. This is something that the Pakistanis have done through the 90s, through the 2000s, sort of upping the ante and then get India to sort of get caught up in that sort of whirlpool of talks and diplomacy and conversations and action reaction and all of the rest. As many of you have pointed out, I think you're looking at a new situation, new normal in Jammu and Kashmir and between India and Pakistan that Pakistan simply does not like. So it is trying to do pretty much everything that it can in order to get your attention. And this is not new. And therefore, I think as I said earlier, the policy must be very clear. There must be calibrated response as the government feels appropriate. But I don't think we must sort of sacrifice some of other big pursuits in diplomacy and focus on this Pakistani blackmail, as it were.
Yeah, so this is always the bind, right? Pakistan's weaponization of terrorism. This is the exact calculation that India will respond, but that will, of course, take away for some time the sense of stability and normalcy and happy times in Kashmir. And it is the bind, it is the blackmail, it is the extortion game that Pakistan plays, using terrorism as an instrument of literally of state policy. I want to play out Sakina Ittu. This is the first political official on camera comment that we have of the deaths, the casualty figures. These casualty figures are still being counted. They're all tourists. There might be some locals as well, because as Zafar describes, these are local Kashmiris who, the pony wala, the ghode wala are all local Kashmiris. And they are the ones taking these tourists up the mountains, the hills of Pahalgam, which is where this attack has happened. I want to play out both Sakina Ittu and Ravinder Raina's reactions. Let's start with Sakina Ittu's comment.
तीन जो है वो बेटर कंडीशन में है, एक की हालत जो है वो थोड़ा सा खराब है, वो भी उसका भी इलाज चल रहा है, लेकिन तीन जो है वो बिल्कुल काफ़ी ठीक है, वो इलाज किया गया है, अब वो बेहतर है पहले से। सिर्फ एक जो है वो भी एक डॉक्टर है, बाकी इंजरीज हैं, डॉक्टर्स देख रहे हैं, मैं नहीं देखा है में गए हैं, लेकिन वो थोड़ा सीरियस है। टोटल क्या फिगर्स हैं? टोटल 13 आ रहे हैं, उनमें से एक को जो है लिख किया गया है श्रीनगर सिक्किम में, 4 यहाँ पे हैं, बाकी जो माइनर इंजरीज हैं वो ठीक है, 1 जो है। तो क्या इंस्ट्रक्शंस दी गई हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट को भी आपकी तरफ से? ग्राउंड लेवल पर आपकी हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट तो काम कर रहे हैं, डॉक्टर्स काम कर रहे हैं, लगे हुए हैं डॉक्टर्स की सारी टीमें इस वक्त बिल्कुल ड्यूटी पे हैं, अपना काम कर रहे हैं, जितना इलाज ज़रूरत है, जो भी पॉसिबिलिटी है, जितना मुमकिन होगा, पहले अल्लाह ताला के चाहने से डॉक्टर्स भी अपना काम करके इनका इलाज सही ढंग से करें, जितना ज़्यादा हो सके इनकी जानें जो है बचा सकें। नेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस इस चीज़ को देख रही है? अगर ओवरऑल हम बात करें, टूरिस्ट को अटैक करना, पर्यटक को अटैक करना यहाँ पर, ये बदकिस्मती की बात है, नहीं होना चाहिए, इसको जितना भी कंडेम किया जाए वो कम है। मेरे साथी दूसरे जो ऑनरेबल मिनिस्टर हैं, जावेद अहमद डार साहब, हॉर्टिकल्चर मिनिस्टर, मेरे साथी जो ऑनरेबल MLAs हैं, बशीर अहमद मीरी साहब हैं, रियाज अहमद खान साहब है, अब्दुल मजीद लारवी साहब है, तो हम सबको ये तो मेरे ख्याल से हर एक इंसान जो है वो इसके लिए दुख का इजहार करता है। बहुत मुश्किल टाइम है ये, जो बेचारे हस्बैंड वाइफ एक जो घूमने आए थे, और इसमें से काफ़ी लोग जो जख्मी हुए हैं, जिसकी डेथ हुई है, ये नहीं होना चाहिए, बदकिस्मती की बात है, हम इसको कंडेम करते हैं।
Right. So Zafar, you want to just summarize for us Sakina Ittu and
yes, yes,
I couldn't hear very clearly whether the number.
Yes, she said 14 people have been killed. That is what she said in her soundbite, and she also described the situation that there was a couple who are also targeted, and people who are injured have been moved to the hospital. She's saying that this is very unfortunate, should not have happened, and all the senior leaders are on their way to the spot where this incident took place. But importantly, this is for the first time as senior minister in Jammu and Kashmir is giving some details about the casualty figures, saying that 14 people have been killed. Sakina Ittu, who's the National Conference leader and also a minister in Jammu and Kashmir, giving details about this incident and also saying that the injured have been moved to the hospital, and clearly saying that this is condemnable and unfortunate and this should not have happened, and all the senior leaders are on their way to the place, to Pahalgam, where this incident has taken place. Chief Minister Omar Abdullah has also left for Pahalgam, and Home Minister Amit Shah is landing in Kashmir at about 8 p.m. That's a short while from now, and he'll be also headed to Pahalgam. Those are the details that we have.
Right. We have the figure of 14 from Sakina Ittu, which is the first time that we have a casualty figure from anybody who is in government. Sakina Ittu is, of course, a national conference leader from the area. The question that I am faced with is that this may not be where the casualty figures end. These numbers are still being tabulated. And I just I'm wondering what happens immediately. If you're in the administration, if you're in the government, if you're in the army, if you're in the police, what would you be looking at immediately, General Shukla?
So now I'll have to repeat virtually the same points that, I mean, the numbers 14, or if they are larger, I mean, are absolutely tragic. Look at the circumstances and the reels that are coming out. They're gruesome. I mean, it has to be condemned dastardly, cowardly, whatever you like. And I'm sure the administration will do by way of tightening up. The security forces will do whatever is required to strengthen the security grid. All that must be done. But the challenge of governance really today, or in this particular situation, is, and it's not going to be easy, if will lie in not letting this event, howsoever tragic, subtract from the larger normalcy which has been created, which is such a big achievement. Now, it's not going to be easy because it's tragic. People have lost their lives. Emotions are running high. But it is a challenge for local governance. And as far as the broader response is concerned, India is a big state. We have a powerful strategic military enterprise. We have many options along the way. We should play our cards coolly and respond in a calibrated manner. And that response should be, divorced from emotions. So it's a complex situation which will require very wise governance, good statecraft. I'm sure if all those who are in the know and who are, who have this responsibility will do their best in the circumstances. And as in the past, each time we have been challenged, we have come out on top. I think we'll do this again.
Sorry, let me play out the BJP's Ravinder Raina's comment before taking a last word from Happy Mon, and then we should all, I guess, regroup to see exactly what the situation is on the ground. Dr. Happy Mon. Sorry,
No,
hang on. Let me play out Ravinder Raina's statement, then I'll come to you. The BJP's Ravinder Raina.
दक्षिण कश्मीर के पहलगाम में पर्यटकों के ऊपर कायराना आतंकी हमला किया है। कायर पाकिस्तानी आतंकवादी भारतीय सेना, जम्मू कश्मीर पुलिस और हमारे पैरामिलिट्री फोर्सेस के जांबाज वीरों का तो सामना कर नहीं सकते। इन कायर, इन बुज़दिल पाकिस्तानी आतंकवादियों ने कश्मीर को घूमने आए निहत्थे निर्दोष पर्यटकों को निशाना बनाया है। कुछ पर्यटकों को घायल अवस्था में वहां स्थानीय हॉस्पिटल में जेर इलाज के लिए दाखिल किया गया है। सारे क्षेत्र की घेराबंदी सेना पुलिस ने कर दी है। जो आतंकवादी पहलगाम के इस हमले के गुनहगार हैं, या इन आतंकवादियों के जो मददगार हैं, उनको जमीन के पाताल से भी निकाल कर उनको उनके गुनाहों की सजा दी जाएगी।
Right, a very emotional statement there from the BJP's Mr. Raina. Dr. Happy Mon, let's just bring you in for a last comment. Again, the casualties, the death toll is still being tabulated. Sakina Ittu of the National Conference says 14. Those numbers are expected to rise. Amit Shah is in Kashmir. There is going to be a response, and it's going to be a calibrated response. This is targeted killings, tourists targeted, outsiders, in quotes, outsiders targeted. Go ahead, Dr. Jacob, with your response.
Right. And Barka, I think this clearly is turning out to be one of the biggest attacks against civilians in the recent past. If you look at as I said, I'm looking at the statistics in that, and I can see that the pattern. This is turning out to be one major attack. I don't think the government will be able to set aside this incident, merely condemn it and move on without actually taking any kinetic action, as it were. I think the government has a choice to make here, how to best respond to this incident, this tragic incident, this attack on Indian civilians in Jammu and Kashmir, and send a stern lesson to Pakistan. I think there is no getting away from that fact, given the sort of size of this attack and the responses coming from various leaders in Jammu and Kashmir and outside.
It is a grim day. We leave it there to Zafar Iqbal, General Shukla, Dr. Happymon Jacob. For anyone who's just joined us, there has been a major terror strike in Pahalgam, in Jammu and Kashmir, in the Anantnag area, as tourists were going up on ponies and horses, enjoying a summer day out. As this is peak tourist season, they were targeted, specifically singled out. The terrorists, according to my colleague Zafar, were camouflaged in military gear so as to not stand out. I remember this possibly took place up on the hills where there is no Pakka road, making a response time and rescue time that much more challenging. The Prime Minister has said that the perpetrators will be brought to justice. The Lieutenant Governor of Jammu and Kashmir has said that the blood of the security forces is boiling. The Home Minister is in Jammu and Kashmir, and Omar Abdullah has said that this has been the worst targeting of civilians in Kashmir in recent years. The situation is indeed very, very grim. We are awaiting official word on the casualties, and please do keep watching the Mojo Story for more. Thanking General Shukla, Zafar Iqbal, and Dr. Jacob for now. See you shortly.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed,